Welcome to Motorsport 101. I'm RJ O'Connell, joined by Dre Harrison and Cam Buckley. We will talk more about the MotoGP and Malaysian Grand Prix, but of course, we need to talk about the horrific crash during the sighting lap of the Moto3 race and send our best wishes to Moto3 riders Noah Dettwiler and Jose Antonio Rueda. They were involved in an accident before the start of their race that left Noah in critical condition. Now, as of today, Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, his condition has been upgraded to stable and no longer critical. He's had multiple surgeries. He'll continue to be monitored closely in the intensive care unit for the next couple of days. This is a statement from his team, CIP Green Power. Jose Antonio Rueda had a fracture in his hand and a number of contusions. He was confirmed as alert and awake later on Sunday and is moved to another hospital to continue to monitor his condition before he returns home to Spain for surgery on his hand. And Dre, I guess we should start by asking, what happened here?
Well, yeah, this is for full context as to what happened. This was, as mentioned, on the sighting lap. So this is when the bikes first leave the garage on the way to the grid, normally around half an hour out before the green flag time for the race itself. We didn't know it until later on when it was first reported that Noah Dettwiler's CIP Green Power Moto3 bike had a technical problem. So he was moving quite slowly. This is a problem for many reasons, which we'll get to as we talk about this in a bit more depth. But he is slow on the outside of the exit of turn 3 on the run down to sector 2. He's on the outside of the track. Jose Antonio Rueda, you may probably heard of him already given he's this year's Moto3 world champion. He was going out of that corner at near full racing speed. He obviously does not know that Dettwiler's bike's got a problem. Unfortunately, he's missed, because Angel Perkier knew there was a problem on track as well, one of his main title rivals, and he was trying to flag it down, say, slow down, but obviously he's missed it, and he's ploughed into the back of Dettwiler's bike at nearly full racing speed, while Noah himself is riding probably in first gear in get me home mode, probably, or something along those lines. And it is, as someone who's unfortunately had to see the replay of this, it is a violent impact. The worst ones in bike racing are often when somebody hits someone else with a huge speed difference. That normally is about as bad as it gets in bike racing. And yeah, as RJ said in his intro earlier, both men were treated on the track, both airlifted to hospital immediately. There was an hour and a half delay. We eventually did get a Moto3 race. It was reduced to 10 laps. It will be won by Taya Furusato, his first ever Moto3 win, sadly marred by the pretty horrific events that happened beforehand. Just that's the full context as to what happened. As RJ alluded to, Rueda is thankfully fine for the most part. He's bruised and dinged up. Like I said, he's got a broken hand, but he'll likely be fine and make a full recovery. TNT Sports, and look, I've had my fair fill of taking the piss out of TNT Sports on this podcast, with full disclosure, but they have good people behind the scenes. If they're reporting it, I will take that as kosher. It seems that Dettwiler suffered a punctured lung and an open fracture to his leg, and it was a severe one because it was the sort of leg fracture where he was losing a very large amount of blood. If you're a veteran bike fan, you might remember Tito Rabat's horrible leg crash with Silverstone back in 2019, that weekend that ultimately was cancelled because of the bad weather. That was, if you want, I don't want to necessarily bring up gruesome memories, but if you want a reference of something similar, this is probably your closest example. A crash that Tito, to this day, said that if it wasn't for Silverstone's paramedics, he would have been dead. Because they saved his life with how quick they were able to respond, spot the problem, and get it fixed, and get him in an operating room. Beforehand, as again RJ said, Noah was deemed to no longer be in critical condition as of this morning, and that is fantastic news, the best possible news we could get in this scenario.
Yeah.
And now as we drift into more opinionated stuff, we were fucking lucky. We were so goddamn lucky as a sport that this was the outcome. It wouldn't have taken much more for this to be so much worse than what it actually ended up being. Mm-hmm. The fact we're sitting here now on a Wednesday night and we can say Noah's through the worst of it and he will probably be okay is a miracle, because that was one of the most violent crashes I've ever seen in Moto3, and I do not recommend going out of your way to find it.
No, don't. You
please don't.
You do yourself a disservice to go out and find it. I mean,
I don't even think VideoPass would have it. I would be surprised if they actually left something like that in. I mean,
no.
we got a lot of things we should talk about, like starting with the way the MotoGP weekend schedule is. There's a couple levels to it. Obviously, MotoGP, the big one, has to take priority. Is that right? There's no warm-ups now that we have riders' parades. Do we bring that back? I want to know your thoughts on this.
I mean, the reason why you have the warm-ups in the morning, and all three classes had warm-ups until relatively recently, was to check bikes check bikes to mechanical failures. If you've got an issue that crops up, this is a dedicated session to go out, get a feel for the bike, not be too bunched up, and not have it be incentivized for people to, I mean, you run it early enough, it's not representative, right? In this instance, and one of the contributing factors is that this is your only real shot at feeling what your motorcycle is going to be like before you go out and you do it for real, right? And so, with Noah's bike having the mechanical failure, it's in Rueda's best interest to go out and be at racing speed, because he's going to know what to expect once the race gets underway. And it just ends up in a horrible set of circumstances that combine to cause this incident.
It's an interesting take on that, because I come from a sector of motorsport where there's a common phrase that comes from morning warm-up sessions, and that is that nothing good ever comes out of morning warm-up sections, because there's always the risk of what could possibly go wrong before the race even starts.
Yeah, Cam pretty much got it in one, in my opinion, and unfortunately, like, again, I've made this point in articles I've written and in other episodes of the show that I've had the pleasure of being able to be on, and people that have spoken to me about it. I've always echoed the same thing. A lot of people want to pin this on Liberty Media because they've been in the process of buying this sport for nearly 2 years now, and now they are officially owners of this sport. Anyone who's been watching bike racing on a hardcore level for some time now will know that Dorna has been pushing in this direction for quite some time, where the Premier class is now front and center and an even bigger priority than it already was. And I need to make this abundantly clear. They got rid of Moto3 and Moto2 warm-ups because they wanted to get in the Riders' Parade in a straight-up carbon copy of Formula 1, get all the riders on a bus and have them tour the circuit about 2 hours out before the race, and the Hero Walk, where fans will line up around a couple of grandstand, rows, and have the riders come out and take selfies and sign autographs. Now, look,
wouldn't you do that earlier in the weekend, though?
Look, I'm not going to sit here. I mean, they do 2 Hero Walks over the weekend. I think they do one on a Saturday and then a Sunday. I am never going to be the person to say, oh, more fan interaction is bad, actually. No. However,
come at a cost.
It's come at a cost, and the cost is the general safety of Moto 2 and 3, because as Cam said, you need to check these bikes in the morning so they actually work properly. And it's much better you find out in a warm-up session, even if it's only 10 minutes long like MotoGP's is. You better to find out then than during the race itself. And the second element of this is when you've only got a sighting lap and a warm-up lap to check the track conditions before you're racing for real. And in a sport where every advantage and every bit of knowledge is crucial towards how your race plays out, is it any surprise that someone's taking a sighting lap at nearly full racing speed? It's inevitable.
What are racing drivers and riders paid to do?
They're paid to race, and they're paid to take every advantage they can manage.
Yep, you are paid to take the risk. You are paid to find advantages where others cannot find them. And if that's worth a position on track, you take that. And it's something that Dorna is so... and now you can see it because, well, Liberty Media owns them. But for the last 3 or 4 years, hate being compared to Formula One. Oh, Formula One, Formula One is nothing like this. We have the best racing product, all of this. Quick, write that down, copy everything they do. If they don't take it to 100%, don't back down, double down, triple down in terms of the sprint. Where F1 was a toe in the water with sprint weekends initially, MotoGP cannonballed into the pool.
They went all in. They went from 0 sprint weekends to all of race weekends involving sprints, basically adding about 60% to the level of effective racing in the space of 1 year in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And to sacrifice for that sprint and the extra racing they were going to get over a race weekend, we now have this new weekend schedule where the Hero Walkers come in, the Riders Paraders come in, and as Cam quite rightly alluded to, even before Formula One thought about buying this sport, they were reading off their copybook. They were taking notes. They saw the explosion in growth that Formula One had and the resonation it had that Formula One had during the pandemic, and they were reading off the same notebook. Like, that's... like Hervé Poncharal said the quiet part out loud when they first brought in the sprint. They blatantly copied Formula One because they saw the success, and from a numbers and from a viewing standpoint, it has worked. Saturday ratings in MotoGP are massively up across the board because we as fans will always be suckers for more meaningful racing. And unfortunately, one of the sacrifices and the compromises that we probably shouldn't have compromised on was the run-in of Moto 2 and 3 as a direct result, which, again, is already being shunted to the back. We talked about this earlier this year with the garage situation, the lack of comparable subsidies compared to the Premier class, the reduction in TV coverage, and whenever a race weekend like this plays out, Moto 3 and Moto 2 will always be the sacrificial lambs, because for full context, they moved the Moto 2 race until after the MotoGP race so that the TV stations still had their hour-long break before the MotoGP race so they could get all their pre-race shit in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I get it. I'm not going to criticize it. TV's your main source of income. You've got to make those moves. You've got to make those decisions.
There's a reason why. It's because it's worked, right?
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the viewership. But the addition of racing, coupled to the reduction in preparation, I guess we'd call it, for the Moto 2 and 3, that has to be factored in with just something we all have to accept as bike racing fans. And that some days, it just turns out really, really badly. This could have been... like, it's something that, like, as someone who's been watching motorcycles, has been into motorcycles his whole life, it's something that's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And putting more undue risk on the riders and teams really isn't the move.
And
I don't disagree. And
yeah.
look, Wasn't I just talking about this the other week? And I hate to do the like Apollo and the get the prophecy thing. Wasn't I just talking about how like, man, for a while we were really enjoying Moto 3. That was the best bargain in motorsport entertainment for a while.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the risk wasn't worth the reward. And then this happens. And I know it's not in standard Moto 3 racing conditions. Is this just inherently dangerous?
It is.
Motorcycle racing. Look, there is only one thing protecting you from going wherever you're going to end up, and it's your airbags and your leathers. And sometimes that ain't enough.
And don't get me wrong, this sport is a far, far more safer one than it was when I was growing up in the 90s and I started being introduced into bike racing. We've come a long way in the last 25 years, but bike racing is still one of the most inherently dangerous sports on earth. There is no getting around that fact. There is only so much safety can do for you. And let's tear the Band-Aid off for a minute here. Moto 3 has been an inherently more dangerous series for years, and we kind of championed that as fans. We're a little bit guilty of that ourselves.
It's the thrill of watching 20-odd bikes in a pack, Talladega style, at the precipice of disaster. When they make it work, there's nothing else quite like it. What's one of the favorite things in our downtime to watch? Oh, let's watch Marc Marquez elbow save a bike that's trying to kill him 5 times a weekend.
Yeah.
It's part of the thrill. It's why things like Isle of Man TT remain, even though it is the ultimate in gladiatorial risk versus reward, where if you get it right, you're a historic hero, and if you get it wrong, you're probably not here anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Moto 3, if we're breaking this down on a little bit of a deeper level here, Moto 3 has had this problem for a long time. I'll be honest, I have not enjoyed it on the same level with the level of guilt that I felt since we lost Jason Dupasquier back in 2021. That was a horrible year for bike racing in general. We lost Hugo Milan and we also lost Dean Berto Vinales, Maverick's cousin, that same year. It was a horrible year, and it was the year that I think a lot of people woke up to the inherent problems that come with Moto 3, which, as Cam alluded to, these bikes only have 40 horsepower. They only weigh about 80 kilos. That still means it has about 500 brake horsepower per ton. It's an incredibly volatile prototype missile. Because their gears are so short, to try and gain every advantage they can get, because they can slipstream each other so easily and from so far back, as much as maybe 10 bike lengths, you get these enormous packs. It's hard to break away. It's hard to break to the front. It generates fantastic racing, but it also is unbelievably dangerous. And it doesn't take an awful lot to go wrong for something very, very bad to happen. And that is the reason why Moto 3 is set to change. We talked about this on last week's show. Just a quick recap on that 2028, Moto 3 is going to ditch these prototypes for Yamaha R7s. It's going to be a one-make series based off the R7 production model. It's going to be a lot cheaper. It's going to be a lot more powerful. They're trying to smooth that power curve between MotoGP and Moto 3 in general. Hopefully it makes for a better series in the future. A couple of problems with that, in my opinion. Number one, that's not for another 2 years, because it's 2028. The other drawback is you're just moving the problem, because these bikes are going to be repackaged and they're going to be used as what they're now going to apparently call Moto 4, and they're still going to be used at Talent Cup and Junior GP level, which at that point, are you really getting rid of the problem, or are you just making it so it's not as high profile a problem with it not being on your main broadcasts every week?
Yeah, we're kind of dropping a Moto 2.5 in the middle is what we're really doing.
Yeah, that's what may seem like a very ignorant question. We used to have 250cc World Championship motorcycle bikes.
We did.
Like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When did it become such a problem now to have these low displacement bicycles?
Well, that was Moto 2, was what with the 250 cc's. With these, what's happened is that much like restrictor plate / tapered spacer NASCAR stock cars, slipstream is so important, nobody can get away from one another. It's slower most of the time to run alone. Also, because this is more or less the entry level into Grand Prix motorcycle racing, this and Talent Cup, the biggest thing they're trying to do with this, at least on this level, is try and cut some costs of Moto 3. That said, these are still full-blown prototypes with small displacement engines that are going to Moto 4. As Dre says, you're just kicking the problem down a rung on the ladder and kind of dropping a Moto 2.5 in the middle to try and smooth out that transition.
And I need to point out here, sorry to cut the cam,
yeah,
but it's been a fucking horrible year for Junior GP this year.
Yeah.
We had Borja Gomez pass away in July, and if you've seen Matt Oxley and others report on it, it seemingly was a shambolic organisation that partially led to Borja's tragic passing, an ambulance that took 15 minutes to arrive at the scene, a lack of marshals, a lack of event planning and organisation that led to that, and it's angered a lot of people within bike racing. We lost Pau Alsina and Aragon, who had a huge crash there and died in hospital a couple of days later. And I would be remiss not to mention the British Supersport tragedy we had earlier this year at Alton Park, where Owen Jenner and Shane Richardson passed away in what was an 11-bike pileup. Similar circumstances, similar power level and production of bike getting stacked up, causing a huge accident. It's been another really horrible year in bike racing, and it just sucks that it takes incidents like what happened with Noah for us to have these conversations, because we don't take them seriously until something serious happens. I wish bike racing as a sport was way more proactive when it came to having these dialogues, because, I mean, and again, as a former member of the media who used to cover this sport on a high level, the fact that all the big players pretty much dropped the why aren't we bringing back the warm-ups pretty much at the same time on Monday morning was pretty much everything wrong with the state of play in this industry, because we needed to be making this a much more vocal issue 2 years ago when the change was made, not now that Noah Dettwiler's in a hospital wing. It was so predictable, it angered me, because it was like, here comes the Monday morning wave of angry posts talking about why didn't we bring this back. No, where were you guys 2 years ago?
Yeah, they're right, but this could have been said like a while ago before Dorna pushed through the idea of having a sprint at every round down the rider's throat with
Well, because there are journalists behind the scenes begging the riders to form a riders union, and the riders won't unify on it.
And I guarantee you the editors of the big players probably didn't think it was a sexy enough story to publish.
So, you mentioned, Dre,
Not
that
until you can get the clicks for someone being hurt.
Tayo Furusato won this race in the end, you said, yes?
You did, yeah.
This is no disrespect to Tayo Furusato. Why? Should this race have gone on?
I don't
Probably
think
not.
it should have. Look, if there's if there's one thing I will praise this generation of bike riders for, they are a lot more open to discuss these elements. If there's one thing I noticed from the post-race debriefs from the Malaysian Grand Prix in general, it was that multiple riders, before they even started talking, was like, we need to acknowledge Noah and Jose. And we're not... Pecco Bagnaia, Marco Bezzecchi, Johan Mir, to name a few, were multiple of the riders that immediately said, we probably shouldn't have raced. Like Frankie Morbidelli was another one as well, who made it abundantly clear, first and foremost, we need to talk about these two. And they said it was genuinely incredibly difficult to be able to focus and concentrate on their race when they did not know what Noah and Jose's condition was They've seen for themselves on TV them being airlifted to hospital. These are their friends. These are their colleagues. Like, there's a lot of deep friendships between multiple classes in this paddock. I mean, you look at Fabio Quartararo and Jake Dixon, for example. They're close with people like Ayumu Sasaki and David Alonso, guys that at one point were in Moto3 themselves. It's a close paddock. So when the senior guys, who were racing like 2 hours later, are being said, we couldn't concentrate because of knowing what had happened, I can't imagine what their peers in the Moto3 grid had to have been thinking. The series champion was being airlifted to hospital. Noah Dettwiler was fighting for his life. And an hour and a half, we're being told, go out and go race. For me, I think that's ludicrous. Where's the, and I get it. It is a loveless, thankless task to organise these Grand Prix, and I do not envy anybody who has to make those incredibly difficult decisions. I couldn't do it. I'll tell you that for free. But I do wonder, as a fan, as someone who cares, and I hate to ask this question, but it's a sincere one. Does it take someone dying for a race to be cancelled?
Did here in 2011. It did.
What is it going to take? What does it have to take? Why do
outside of inclement weather, it may take that, and I don't want to test those theories, man.
Yeah,
no.
and oftentimes you won't get riders being unified on that either, unless it's so bad that it's just genuinely not raceable. Yeah, it's. I don't know what it's going to take, and I don't want to have to find out.
The fact I even have to pose that question with doubt in my head as to where you draw the line for something like that worries me. And I get it, there is no good answer. I know the consequences of cancelling a race and the financial ramifications, the organisational ramifications. I'm not trying to diminish that. Of course, that sucks for someone, and at some degree. It's a business at the end of the day, and to call it anything other than that is me lying to you about what this is. But I think humanity and empathy should come first with these decisions. Dorna's not going to go bankrupt if we don't get a Moto3 race on a weekend where the championship is already over in the last week of October.
Yeah.
There is always an element of the show must go on.
I don't like that.
That has to have its limits, and that limit has to stop somewhere prior to a competitor passing away. The line cannot be there.
I would have had zero complaints. In fact, I would have probably said it was the right thing to do if that race did not go ahead. Especially given at the time we did not know what Noah's condition was.
I mean, Dre, that's Wednesday, October 29th right now. He's only just come out of the worst of it this morning, U.S. time. It was a really fucking hairy 72 hours since that crash. It's something that, to be a motorcycle racing fan, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's just a horrible feeling.
It's a horrible feeling. Before we move on, I think I echo all three of us here when I say our very best wishes to Jose and Noah going forward. Thank the heavens that it looks like they're going to make a full recovery and it looks like they're going to be okay. Because, boy, I wasn't sure about that one until this morning. It's been a horrible year of bike racing. It's been a horrible year when it comes to fatalities, to serious injuries. We got very lucky on Jorge Martin earlier this year as it is, quite frankly. And it just, for me, to put a bow on this, is just to say I'm getting a little bit fed up of having to dodge bullets when it comes to things like this. And I know to a degree that's unavoidable, but man,
we should be. We should
can do
be
this
able
better.
to mitigate. Yeah, we can do a better job at this. We as a sport, they can be doing a better job of making sure those bullets aren't in the chamber without any degradation to the racing product that we come here for.
Yeah. Best wishes to Jose and Noah, to their families, to their loved ones, to their friends, to their peers in the paddock. We know many of these people in said paddock, and again, I can't begin to describe how difficult that must be to keep going. I was watching TNT's coverage of the race, and like, if there's one thing that kind of hurt me to watch, it was Susie Perry, who hosts the TNT coverage, has been doing this from biking for 20 plus years. She could barely get her words out when she was talking about the MotoGP race preview, knowing what had happened earlier on in the Moto3 race. I can't begin to imagine having the professionalism to carry on through that, and that applies for not just her, but for so many people in that paddock. And I know that for many of them, it's not the first time they've had to go through something like that. I wish in a perfect world it would never happen, but again, with bike racing, we know the risk, we know the danger, and to be a fan of this sport, you can't ignore that. I just wish we could do this a little bit better to make the bad days hurt a little bit less. That's all I ask.
Well said, gentlemen. We do have a MotoGP race to talk about. Pecco Bagnaia was back in his bag because every time we try to fire him, he goes and sets the world on fire. But it was Alex Marquez that won the Grand Prix. Pecco Bagnaia, despite a faulty ride-height device, dominated the sprint from pole position. Questionable choice hampers him on race day as the medium front tire had him drop to third behind Alex Marquez and Pedro Acosta. With 3 laps to go, Bagnaia pulls off after suffering a slow left rear tire puncture. He does not see the checkered flag was due to debris that wasn't cleared up earlier. It left Alex Marquez to take a comfortable victory ahead of Pedro Acosta second, Johan Mir with a second podium of the season for Honda in third, and Alex Marquez clinches second place in the MotoGP World Championship behind his brother, first brothers to finish 1 and 2 in the standings.
Left rear tire? Same to Dodge Tomahawk.
Okay, slow rear tire. Okay,
yes.
It's been a tough one.
It's been a day.
It's been a long day. Understandable.
God, Pecco Bagnaia is so weird.
I'll get to that one in a minute. We got to give Alex Marquez his flowers. I mean, this was like the one round, knowing that we knew that Alex Marquez was fast this season, that we were going to be circling on the calendar, because we all know Alex Marquez loves Sepang like an adopted child. And yeah, in the race, went out and did the damn thing. Took the lead early on, got in front, didn't really look back. He was managing that gap. It was about 0.8 to 1.2 for most of that race, really pulled away towards the end. Late race pace has been a strength of both Marquez brothers pretty much all year long, and this was no exception. A comfortable, almost lights to flag victory in the end. And just an exceptional ride to seal what I think Alex has deserved this year, Cam, and that is runner-up in the championship.
Yeah, brothers, 1-2 in the MotoGP World Championship. I know somewhere Alberto Puig is punching drywall, and
he had both those dudes at the same time. He had both of them at the same time. He fired
Alex before he ran in anger.
And they are now 1 and 2 in a MotoGP World Championship for another manufacturer. How salty is that man right now? How much salt did he just dump in his ramen?
It can't be too salty. Johan Mir just got on the podium.
They're getting there. This is yet another race, and actually Honda posted a comparison picture from last year's bike to this year's bike. Last year's being just rotten in every possible way, and every surface of that bike is different. The money and the concessions are working. The talent that they have brought in is working, and for fucking finally, Johan Mir is getting back to being the truth. I declared him the truth, and then he started lying. He's getting back there. Anyway, Alex Marquez, the solution for Grazzini, they should just bring a special livery every weekend.
Yeah,
it's a championship.
They should just do portraits of tributes to album covers every single weekend. They've been coming up with some good ones lately. M83 coming out the bag? Dog.
Yeah, like it's a much bigger social media improvement for them, given they were using cornrows this time last year. So good improvement to focus on music albums instead, Grassini. Way to go. And yes, I was a big fan of the accidental tricolor they broke out during the race on Sunday, given it was a darker shade of blue. It was really for BK8, their gambling sponsor. That's the title campaign for their team, given that's the part of the world they trade in. But we'll take the accidental tricolor.
Are we getting a Terry Rozier livery next race?
Depends. We'll put something on it.
By the way,
just enough to make you uncomfortable.
Crazy, by the way, that the Portland Trailblazers fans are getting serenaded with FBI chants by the fans of, and I want to make sure I have this correct, the Los Angeles Clippers, who were alleged of paying sweetener payments to star player Kawhi Leonard over the summer.
Well,
what a summer it's been.
Yeah. Skirting the salary cap is illegal in sporting terms. Illegal gambling is illegal in illegality terms.
Chauncey Billups was involved with the Italian mafia, man. Nothing to do with this bike racing. It's just crazy.
No.
But yeah, I don't want to hear a word. Alex Marquez has been excellent this year. His one crime has been not being as excellent as the possible greatest of all time on a motorcycle. Took a couple weekends off, but I said it at the end of last week's podcast. Might be worth putting some money down on an Alex double. Didn't quite do it in the sprint, but did he ever really look like he was going to lose the Grand Prix?
He was all over Pecco early on. I think Pecco ultimately made the wrong choice by putting the medium front on. Again, maybe if he has a clean run, he comes back a bit at the end, but the puncher was already... We'll never know, because from what we've now been told, Bagnaia had a slow rear puncher for 5 laps before it got bad enough to the point where he really just couldn't race on it anymore. So he was nursing that. Obviously having a rear tyre that was just slowly losing pressure, which you want a little bit of that, but not too much, obviously.
Just enough for it to not get penalized. Nope, that's too low.
No.
Hole in the tyre, just a classic debris puncture. And derailed yet another weekend where Pecco looked back to his old self after last week being completely untenable as a MotoGP rider. I don't know what to make of this anymore.
Third worst. Third was going to be at worst for him on what would have been a really nice weekend for Pecco alongside the sprint win. And
alongside the fact that Aprilia were absolute cheeks this weekend.
What happened there? We were just talking... It's not just that we were talking about,
we'll get to that in a moment.
Pecco is so bad right now, and Aprilia's got the best bike, and this flipped.
Well, he could have... The thing is, he could have landed a counterpunch for the first time in a little bit of trying to reclaim third in the Riders' Championship. And through no fault of his own, that did not happen.
Yeah,
I still don't know what's going on, man. It can't be 0 or maximum points. There's gotta be something in the middle of that sandwich.
And again, Ducati's not going to tell us what that is, because they're not telling the media about the setup changes they're making or what decisions are being made in the back about the direction that the team is going in. They're all keeping their cards close to their chest. They don't want to reveal how the sausage is made, even though we visited the sausage factory about half a dozen times in 2025 as it is. It's really annoying, and all we can do is create podcasts and spitball bullshit like this and guess, because Ducati have all of a sudden been very quiet when it comes to the media about Pecco's problems to quote-unquote protect him. That's Davide's own words, which it's annoying.
We got a little bit of an expose about it with Oxley, but then he imploded again right after Motegi. I go back to last week. If he doesn't know what a good setup is because he's lost trying to chase the rabbit, this weekend he looked like he was back in the window. Because he wasn't as fast as he was last year, because I don't think anyone will go as fast around a racetrack as Pecco did last year here. That qualifying lap was art.
That was one of the craziest qualifying laps I've ever seen.
Yeah. And at the same time, right? This year, in Q1, he got through and put it on pole with one fresh rear tire.
Yeah.
There's gotta be something in the middle of this sandwich. It can't either be... He can't look like champion of the world Pecco Bagnaia and bench player Pecco Bagnaia.
It's a Sammy made of air and dog shit at the same time, and I don't know which end to take a piece out of. It doesn't make any sense, because even
somewhere in the middle has to exist all second team MotoGP Pecco Bagnaia.
Right, and I know Raptor's talking about it in our chat saying regarding this, and he thinks he found something in Australia. Sure, he may have done.
He has thought that he has found something a dozen times this year.
Like 8, 9 times. Like, this is I found a breakthrough. This is the one, guys. I think we might have figured something out. Batterton Park, we said we thought he found something. Mugello, we thought he found something. Fucking, like, Australia, he thought he found something. Motegi, he thought he found something. It took a literal picture-based investigation from David Emmett to figure it out. That was last year.
You need more people.
We thought the 355 brakes were going to fix the problem. It is everything at this point. And we can't pinpoint what exactly has made Pecco so bad, and then often still so good over the course of this season. It doesn't make any fucking sense anymore, and I'm tired of having to talk about it every week.
He's exhausting to talk about, for good and bad reasons.
Because when he's on it, he is still as good as anyone in the world. Like, it's oh!
Well, we can talk about something else like Aprilia.
This is part 2 of does Aprilia have the best bike? And the answer is no. And the answer is no for a couple of reasons. And the biggest one is that it does not have... A bad weekend for Ducati is still probably a couple bikes on the podium. At worst, they will have a bike top 5. This is one of those bad weekends for Aprilia where they go, why are you behind the Japanese Cup? And they're few and far between compared to what they were last year, when the bike was still very specialist, very low grip track dependent.
Mm. They're certainly better than that this year.
They're way better than that this year. But the Ducati this weekend was just back to running the field over, as we see so often. They're not invulnerable like we got used to the last 3 or 4 years with Ducati, but a bad weekend for them is still a pretty good one most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Their floor is still too high as a manufacturer.
It's a very good point, and Aprilia, I think a lot of the talk has been that they were struggling with rear tyre grip, and I think that was the big issue in Sepang this weekend, which is a little bit alarming given that this is probably one of the tracks that the teams know best because of all the testing they do on it. And it's now become a genuine weakness for Aprilia that when they can't get their rear tyre down properly and they can't channel the extra aerodynamic grip they get, because their bike, we all know, is fantastic at generating downforce and having excellent cornering speed. If they can't get it
to the ground, it doesn't matter.
If they can't get it to the ground, then what's the point? And I know Sepang has a lot of low-speed corners, which don't help that situation either. But, yeah, Bez was nowhere this weekend. The track houses were down the bottom. It was just a poor weekend across the board for probably their worst of the year. And they've had some bad ones this year, let me tell you. And Bez, who has been challenging for wins for like the last 6 or 7 weekends, was nowhere to be seen. Had to make recovery drives from really bad qualifying situations. And yeah, Bez just ended up ultimately struggling for it. And yeah, a setback for an Aprilia factory that's had nothing but flowers thrown in their direction for the last month or two. Weird.
Still, could be worse.
Yeah.
Could be KTM's financials.
Ugh.
Dude.
Yeah.
At least Pedro Acosta got that podium, man, second. Good to see. Good to see that.
What does this man have to do to get a win on the board in this series?
Like I said last week, 18 riders on this grid has a MotoGP win now. Pedro Acosta is not one of them. Weird.
That doesn't feel like a real stat.
It's a weird stat where 85% of the grid has won a Grand Prix, and Pedro Acosta, the brightest prospect since Marc Marquez and maybe Fabio Quartararo, is not one of them.
He's fifth in the standings with a yawning chasm to the next KTM rider.
He's got an outside shot at third. He genuinely does. He could still finish in the bronze position by the time the year is out. But apparently he's not happy behind the scenes again. He's getting fed up of a KTM team that can't deliver him wins. Because he thinks he's got the talent to do it, and I think he does. He's not far away.
The level that he's been riding at, yeah. The problem is that like KTM as a factory are just not ready to challenge for wins on a consistent basis. And it feels like they've been spinning those tires for about 7 years now.
Maybe next year will be the one that fixes it.
Okay, Ferrari fan. Take the shirt off. Put the copium back in the cupboard.
Yeah, it's that time of year again. Just to get a couple of quick bits of news out of the way before we get out of here. Marc Marquez is done for the season. They announced
shut him down
up to Sepang. They've shut him down, and that includes the Valencia test as well. They had to, indeed, as Cam mentioned last week at Phillip Island, they had to operate on that damaged collarbone that he had off the back of Mandalika. Turns out just part of the recovery of that surgery, he can't move his arm for a month, which completely rules him out of any bike racing at all until the end of November. So that basically means no more Marc Marquez. His season is done. He will get a private test because he will miss the last 3 rounds of the championship. So that will help him catch up a little bit more compared to the standard I'm going to miss the Valencia test situation, but not exactly ideal for Ducati. Thanks, Jorge Martin. Speaking of which, he has also declared himself out for Portimao in a week and a half's time. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't ride again this season. We found out today, Aprilia told the media, quote, "Today, Jorge Martin underwent a medical check with Professor Mir." We all love Dr. Mir, after the surgery that fixed his right clavicle fracture following the accident suffered in Japan. The post-operative evolution is progressing as expected, with full recovery of mobility in his right arm, although the fracture has not yet healed completely. A further check is due in the next few days. That, to me, says more than anything else that I don't think he's riding again this season. Like, for what?
I don't think he has anything particularly to play for. Maybe you bring him in for the Sepang test just to get some direction on next year's bike, but sure. I think that's it. Shitty year to be using / eligible for the number 1. Really, really shitty year.
14 races from Jorge Martin missed this year already, and it will probably be at least 16 before the year is out.
Yeah, as a motorcycle racing fan, sometimes just have a bad year.
It can happen.
It's a good thing Marc Marquez did all that damage in the middle of the year when he did.
Yeah, winning 14 straights tends to help in that sort of situation, certainly.
Any context is helped by winning 14 straight.
MotoGP is back next weekend for the Portuguese Grand Prix. The flyaways are done. We're back in Europe to close it out. Portimao next on the calendar in a week and a half's time for the penultimate round of the championship. Still third to play for between Bez, Acosta, and Bezzecchi. We'll see how that goes. It's that and then Valencia to close out
Acosta
the season.
And Bezzecchi?
Oh, yeah, Bez, Acosta, and Bagnaia, of course.
Bez v. Bez.
Yeah.
Really, that's the story of a season.
It's a great metaphor.
Yeah, actually, I rescind my correction. There you go.
Pecco versus Pecco.
The ultimate battle.
No kidding. We'll be back for that in a couple of weeks' time when it comes to MotoGP and our coverage on this podcast. So until next time, I've been Dre Harrison, they've been Cam Buckley and RJ Connor. You know where to find us on social media. Till then, take care and get well soon, Noah.
Later, y'all.
Get well soon, Noah. Get well soon, Noah. What do you say?